Welcome to What Makes Us Human, a space where we have conversations about what makes us who we are. Each person comes in with their unique perspective to explore this age-old question. So let's welcome today's special guest. Adriana Trandefirescu is an attorney with an award-winning practice, a coach, a mediator, and doctoral candidate at Columbia University's Teachers College, where her research explores how people thrive in an age of accelerating technology. She also holds a Juris Doctor and a Master's in Psychology and Education, and her scholarship at Columbia has earned her awards for her leadership, impact, and community development. What sets Adriana apart is what sits alongside her academic and legal work. For over 25 years, she has been devoted to light body and the study of higher consciousness. And she brings that depth into everything she does, pairing scholarly rigor with the presence of someone who has genuinely done the inner work. Her guiding belief is that human thriving in body, mind, and spirit is the foundation of a life worth living. So please welcome Adriana Trandefirescu.
Thank you, Vyushti. I am honored. I am thrilled. And I am so happy that we get to record some of the fascinating conversations that only we can have. If they're going to be a scintilla as good as interesting and funny and enlivening and inspiring as we have them when we're on the phone or just walking, then we got it. Let's see what happens.
I'm so excited to have you here. So, to open up the space of lovely conversation, I'm going to ask you straight up, what makes us human?
You go straight to it. You're
Yeah.
always straight to it.
Straight to the point.
Of course. Why warm up and why?
Yeah.
Many things make us human. The ability that we connected and we have this bond and this ability to laugh, this ability for me and for you to sense each other, this awareness that is relational. And this is such a poignant question in the current complexity that humanity is going through. And it will go through more and more. We are at the infancy of advanced technologies. And this is where we're now teaching robots how to become like human. Soon, we're going to be like in Star Wars with R2-D2s and 3CPOs, beautiful little buddies, instead of pets, little robots. I mean, I cannot wait to have one to cook for me and to clean the house. Trust me. Or to, help me out with, heavy lifting of when I do my gardening and stuff. But at the same time, it will never replace that conversation that I have with you. It is an awareness, an emotional, affective felt sense embedded in relationships. That is what makes us human, in my opinion.
I love that. And I think you've touched on such an important point on the relationality and even bringing up advanced technology, we're reaching a place where it's just growing at such a rapid rate. And people also tend to lean so much on technology for the things that they create. And, I wonder, does that, at least in your opinion, affect the relational space?
Right. So you've touched upon a point that post-humanists have been bringing up more and more. It is the idea that we are not in a purely humanist, humans are the center of it all. I mean, we think we are, right? But at the same time, we are all intra-related. If you think quantum physics, if you think connections, webs, if you think of entanglements, right? We're not going to go into parallel realities. I think that's a little bit too much for this discussion. On the two of us on the side, we can, but not here and now. Not yet. We are intra-related. Interrelated, intra-related. It's about the web of connections. And this affects the way that we adapt. It affects agency. Now think about it. When you have agency to work on something, it's your decision and you're impacting the environment, or you're reactive and someone, typically a human or someone with a biology, with a biological common sense, impacts you back and you react, and this is how you become agents of change. Now, what is happening? Advanced technologies have the ability to make decisions. So we are already not entangled in an intra-relationship with biological systems, but with non-biological systems like technologies like AI. So the fact that even your ChatGPT or Perplexity or your Gemini or whatever LLM that you use is able to make decisions with you and for you, it impacts you and your agency, and then you impact it back. Until now, it was a relationship where humans had to adapt to technology. Think of, you know me and what a klutz I am still with, setting up Zoom rooms and setting up even calendar invites, for Christ's sakes. I haven't got it there because it takes that discipline. It takes a disciplined mind to learn the steps and repeat them, learn them and repeat them. What is happening now with advanced technologies? Technology is adapting to me. I am creating agents that I am embedding and teaching them, and they are adapting to me. It's a different relationship. And this is, again, baby steps, the infantile steps. Once we get to have bigger decisions and more palpable, such as robots, we will see it more and more and more. I hope this makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense, but I want to understand a little bit more on how do you see that impacting us?
Yeah. So recently, we have stumbled upon being impacted and impacting non-biological systems through AI,
Yeah.
right? Because when I know I've created agents, those agents, they are able to be unlike I'll use Harari's example, unlike a coffee machine that it is, I press a button and it gives me the coffee. This is now a coffee machine that already knows my algorithm, already is embedded with my tastes and likes, and it knows that I like it extra foamy. It knows that I like it to be the multicolor, like at least 3 colors, so it knows which one to pour first. It knows the temperature that I am enjoying it, and it knows that I don't like the aromas. I like plain coffee, that roasty taste. So it's going to make me that by decision. By decision, I have impacted the machine, and the machine is training me, and I'm training it. Versus a simple coffee machine, it has no agency, no consciousness. Not consciousness is the wrong word. We're going to get to consciousness. It's got no ability to make decisions as a cognitive brain. I won't say consciousness because I don't believe that machines will ever get to have consciousness in the way the humans do. In the way the humans do. Yes, in different ways.
That's a lovely thread that I want to pick on. But before we
Mhm.
go there, I want to ask one more question related to what you said, and with this coffee maker analogy as well. Do you think that with AI, or how do you think that the comfort of predictability, right? Like us programming this, what do I call it? This technology, and this technology adapting to us as well. It sounds like there is a little bit of comfort that comes into it, right? You don't need to keep doing the same task. You don't need to figure out how to do things. It's just adapting to you. So, with this overemphasis on comfort, how does that impact our consciousness, number one? But more than that, how does that impact our capacity for growth? Because there is this sense that a lot of growth comes from experiencing discomfort. It's not always the case, but whether we grow through restriction or whether we grow through expansion, both of those have a quality of discomfort, although the texture of it might be different. So, how do you see that relationship play out?
Yeah. So, first of all, small decisions, a little bit of morality. Huge decisions like programming something that deals with like an atomic bomb or the ability to create robotic systems that impact humanity, it takes a lot of morality, a lot of embeddedness of pure, innocent human values, or maybe not innocent, but values that are long term reflective of what might happen. Okay, so setting up a vision is really critical. The second thing that you've mentioned is the growth and the comfort. Growth and comfort, these are layers. When you set up small machines, small decisions, small morality, a lot of comfort. The higher you go, the less comfort, because then you know the amount of impact that you can have upon not only yourself, but humanity. With machines, the problem is that and this might take us into a totally different discussion, which I don't sense it might be the one you want us to go through, but I'll just briefly mention and drop it there. It could be another thread. It is with advanced technologies, we are getting into relying so much upon them and into so much comfort that we're atrophying our own abilities. So this is something that we need to make sure that we keep on honing what is inherently human, and we let the machines keep on doing what's inherently them, and then somehow co-create. Otherwise, we will atrophy what is human as well. So that's a big threat. And you mentioned growth through discomfort, growth to despair, growth through pain, growth through. I want to say that I believe that humanity is soon going to come to an ability to go through joy, because a lot of the small things that have been causing discomfort are already taken care by these advanced technologies. So then humans will have hopefully more time for the things that bring them joy. And this brings us to a moment of what I call alignment. We bend and bend and bend, and we become like little pretzels, bending to the plans of others, to the plans of companies, of others' intentions. And with advanced technologies, I hope that we're going to get to a stage where we'll have more agency and more time and more ability to get things that align with us. And that alignment and that inherently human, because we're talking about it needs to be inherently human, that inherently human ability to know the sense, the felt sense, the affect of that excitement, that feel good of here now and the direction that I'm going, a machine will never have. And that is exactly the felt sense, the ability, the human trait that is able to take us into alignment.
Yes, I loved everything that you said, and I think you've touched on so many important points. The first thing is what you were talking about, like growth and morality and comfort. I feel like what you're also talking to is discernment. And I think that discernment is also such an innately human quality. And without that, we get trapped into boxes of right and wrong. We get trapped into binary thinking. But I think even the development of human consciousness is the capacity for increasing discernment, is to hold paradox, to hold nuance, which is such an important thing. So thank you for bringing that up. And then the second thing that I wanted to touch on is the atrophying of humanness with the
Yes.
over reliance of on AI and advanced technology, because that makes so much sense. And I think that's also the risk of it being so accessible. But like you also said, it gives us the comfort for the machine to do what machines do, and we can be more human. And it reminds me of when the calculator was developed, and I read that beautiful analogy where the mathematicians were so worried that, they're not going to be able to do math anymore because this little gadget can do it for them. But what it actually allowed was more space to be more creative with mathematical thinking. And then the third point that I want to bring up, and I really hope you speak to this a little further, is growing through joy. Because I think that joy is such an underrated emotion. It's such an underrated initiatory experience as well, and I think it's also so innate to, I would say, this quality of humanness, in the sense of when we look at this youthful innocence, but it's not naivete, it's more of
Yeah.
a generative force. So I would love to hear more on your perspective on joy and how that relates to the human experience.
Right. So even if we look through this intra-relational post-humanist, so to say, lens, it's about entanglement. It's about the quantum field. And it's about energy in the end. In the end, we're all the same specks of carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and hydrogen at different frequencies, different vibrations, different placements in different contexts, right? And so therefore we come to look like, a coffee cup or the taste of coffee, or we look to be like the beautiful human that you are, right? So it's just depending on the mix of the formula. Now, if we look at the basic blocks of this formula, it's energy and it's light and it's a frequency. The higher the frequency, the more something resonates with something joyful. The lower the frequency, it is something that it's more stable, it's more concrete, it's immovable. And the universe is based on movement. Consciousness is about that awareness into movement. I know I'm getting a little bit technical here.
Please go ahead.
But it's about the ability to move at a higher frequency, because the universe is about flow movement, and understanding, becoming aware of the stagnancy of a lower frequency, shifting it with the human awareness, with the human lens, which is basically through emotion. Humans and emotion, humans have this navigating system within them that is the emotional body, that typically boardrooms take away and say that, it is an interference. Many transformative models of education have taken away. Education typically has taken away the affect out of education because it is an interference. All it is teach people the ability to become aware, to have that discernment you're talking about, that discernment, that ability to understand that even something that we perceive as lower is nothing else but a polarity, as you've called it, a polarity that is ready to be shifted into something higher. So that is, if we become aware of our emotional systems and our triggers, and we let them be the guidance, the compass, then our awareness starts becoming that ability to know what it is that we need to grow into a higher vibrancy, to bring that into joy, to bring it into a state of excitement, to bring in a state of alignment.
It's funny you said the word vibrancy, and I love that because I think that's what the state of joy gives us, right? It's not just that vibration, but it's also that vibrancy. There's this
Aliveness. It's about
exactly.
aliveness. Yes. It's
And
about movement. The universe is about movement. It's about aliveness. It's about, and that is the, it's not woo science. It is not science of the whatever you call them, the flower powers.
Yeah.
It is science that even large universities are now looking at. And if you think about it, most of disease out there, it is because of this lack of movement and vibrancy within us.
You're 1,000% right, because there is so much research being done on this. And, for those listening in, like there is this model called the Rebus model by Robin Carhart Harris, and he talks about entropy. And he talks about how in a state of low entropy where things aren't able to move so much, right? Like low entropy is categorized by solids. High entropy is categorized by gases. So like the molecules are a lot freer. And he's switched the model where he's just like low entropy is in a state of, say, depression, of the denser emotions, whereas high entropy is a state of lightness, of joy, where we get to loosen what he calls these rigid priors, which is our old way of thinking. If we talk neuroscience, it's like the default mode network. And I think that's exactly what you're speaking to in terms of raising our vibration. And I think you also touched on a very important point on, even being aware. I think awareness is, again, such an important aspect, aware of our triggers, aware of also maybe And I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. Maybe where we're even afraid of experiencing joy and that fear of maybe the other shoe's going to drop or the fear that, joy isn't sustainable. And I'm curious to hear your perspective on that.
Well, anthropologically, we're wired for the negativity effect because that is what has kept us alive through, the thousands and the tens of thousands of years, right? And the hundreds of years that humanity has been evolving. So if we felt no fear and the fact that there was a noise, but there was no noise, but we thought we heard a noise. That kept us alive because 1 in 1,000, when we did look at the noise, it saved us from being eaten by the tiger, right? So anthropologically, we're wired that way. And that is something that it is within our amygdala. It is within our brain chemistry. And this is why we need to cultivate. We are hardwired, born with an ability to have this awareness. We're hardwired, born, but it needs to be cultivated. It is a software that we play in. And most of the time, what happens, education plays the software of strictly the cognitive, fear-based, right? It's as if the education system is, the way that I call it, is like a vehicle that is training humans to drive, that is meant to go on four wheels, right? The affective, the emotional, the physical, the cognitive, and the spiritual. But what has happened? We only put in the cognitive mostly. And what has happened? Well, let's only take in the left side of the cognitive, the rational one, and let's put the affective one on the side because that's an interference. So we basically end up training humans to drive on half a wheel. And then we say, you know what? Let's put on the lenses. There are the humanist lenses. You are the center of the universe. And it doesn't matter that, we have animals. We are, the way that the birds are singing, that the way that the winds are blowing, that the way that, agents, technologies nowadays becoming part of the equation are deciding just just put on the humanist lenses and just drive with them on. Very limited. Where are we going to end up?
Yeah.
We need to put on the not only fine, if you don't want to put the spiritual wheel on, at least put the three wheels on, or at least the cognitive both sides on. Make it a good bicycle at least.
Yeah.
Maybe a tricycle, and eventually put on all the four wheels. Yeah. And then eventually let's take off those glasses and let the full awareness of an intra-connected world. And by the way, I'm talking about this, but I'm actually quoting a lot from Barad. And then I'm also bringing Rosi Braidotti. And basically what I'm saying is I'm quoting them and I'm bringing their ideas in, it mixed in with my own knowledge, and saying that we need to put all four wheels. The affective is to be the primary one as the guidance compass. And then the rational is very important. Nobody's saying take the cognitive out. What I'm saying is bring more wheels on. Yeah, if you want, you could leave the cognitive one as the forefront one. Perfect, it's fine. You could put the rest of the three ones in the back. Do whatever arrangements you want. Just bring them in.
I love that. And it's such a simple way of talking about integration as well, and I'm curious to hear also, yes, from a philosophical point of view, but also more from a personal point of view. How did you bring these four wheels into your lived reality?
So, Vyushti, we live in a world of contrast.
Yeah.
Everything around us is a contrast. You're a Jungian scholar, right? We were actually in the same class, and I loved how poor Dr. Curas, how we tormented him with our questions. But it brought so much of this awareness of our humanity that we live at contrast. We are in a world of polarity. So everything is about the emotional compass. Through my younger years, I grew up in Romania, and my father was imprisoned. A lot of trauma has happened. He had death attempts against him. My mom was kicked out of her job. It just like we used to have like the militia or the people with the those departments that have 3-letter words, whatever they're called, you know, they used to come like in the middle of the night, literally tormenting us. I had no idea what they were looking for. I think it was just a different way of terrorism. So based on a desire to live a free life, that's what my parents wanted, right? No communism. So then some trauma stayed with me. I came to America, all peachy great, but here again, I encounter some things because we bring the baggage of our energies with us. And typically the environment starts mirroring back whatever our energy is from the inside. So I kind of like co-created that same, very similar environment, not very, but similar environment. So at one point I was a, teenager, and I said, I just want to be happy. I just want, I don't want this pain anymore. I don't want this anxiety anymore. I don't want to feel like I don't belong anymore. I don't. And how do I do it? So it was that contrast, the guidance of the pain inside, and knowing, because I did experience joy as a child. Growing up in my grandparents' countryside, it was all joy, you know? So there was a lot of joy too. I wanted the opposite. So that contrast kept me seeking. Initially, I went to self-help books. And then literally, this is the type of podcast when we can say stuff like this. Literally, I go into a Barnes and Nobles and I am looking for the next book that's going to wow me and change me, and I'm going to read it, and that's it. Life is going to shift 180 degrees, and it falls in my lap. It's called Personal Power Through Awareness by my teachers, Sania Roman and Dr. Wayne Packer. I read their first book, I read their second book, I read all their books, and then I started studying with them. Basically, they're channelers of higher energy, higher consciousness. He was a physicist who understood this quantum world. He understood the basic blocks of energy and understood energy at such high levels. So it was not woo science at all. It was a lot of hardcore physics that I believe that is the practice of the quantum field. Of course, I'm just saying this right now. Maybe in 25 years, it'll be known that that is the practice of the quantum field. And these, within these states of consciousness, this ability to allow and create with my own energy body, not from my will, not from mental power. Use of consciousness is not will and mental power, and I think this is something that needs to be erased and cleaned up in consciousness. It is the affective, the energetic, and the sensory, not the mental power, not the willpower. Willpower is part of it. Yes, it is. Just like the cognitive wheel is part of that education, vehicle. It is part of it, but it's not the primary. And we have been trained on that willpower and that cognitive power and on that when it's meant to be the affective sensory. So going into those states of energetic, sensory, affective, yes, it did me to become emotional in some boardrooms, but you know what? It allowed me to know when I can sense joy, when I can sense authenticity, when I can sense realness, as based on what resonates and aligns with who I am. And that is something that if we can teach the younger generations and all of us, that alignment that comes from the inner to the outer, that is key. And by the way, we will go through the stages of being emotional too, because it's training and practice. Not as if you do it once and that's it, you've done it. No, you will go through and you're going to mess up and you're going to cry at times and you're going to look like a freak at times. But you know what? It'll train you. Like I have been trained so well. I have had life and death scenarios, unfortunately, recently, where I was tested. I did not freak out. I acted like the most grounded, yes, cognitive and relational and rational human being to make decisions that were needed to be made perfectly well for the safety of everyone involved. Had I been the emotional freak that people think that that process goes through, I would have freaked out, I would have cried, I would have run out, and I would have said, done, dangerous stuff would have happened. Like people have died, literally.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing all of that and like bringing your experience into the space as well. And especially what you're saying towards the end about you were employing also your cognitive and rational mind. And just
Of
before that,
course.
you were talking about, the emotional and the affective being the space where we can actually tap into like reality, into consciousness. And I think
Yes.
through the story, you've just perfectly demonstrated how both are important, how both exist. You were talking about polarities beforehand
Of
and
course.
coming back to discernment. The situation required the cognitive and the rational, and that's what you employed. But when we're talking about larger experiences, not specific experiences, it sounds like the affective, and we've been trained so much to navigate the world just through the cognitive, through the logical, through the rational mind. And that's stripping us away from this inherent capacity. Like you said, it's hardwired, this type of awareness into our existence. And tapping into that is requires a lot of deprogramming, so to speak. But there again, you brought up such an important point about we're going to mess up, we're going to be imperfect, and that's us in training. And I loved that analogy because of course we are not perfect. We do something once, it's not going to be something that we're going to excel at. Okay, fine, sometimes you might have beginner's luck, but after beginner's luck then you might like stumble again. But that's all part of the journey, like the stumbles, the falls, that's what makes
Of
us
course.
learn, and it enriches our experience so much more. It reminds me of this little video that I saw of a ball going down a ramp, like a straight ramp, and then one that had like ridges. And the one that went down in ridges, which had ups and downs, actually moved a lot faster than the straight ramp. And I think that's such a beautiful example of what you're speaking to.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I wanted to touch on is even your story about being raised in Romania with the traumas over there and then moving to America and saying that I don't want to experience this anymore. I want to be happy. And how even that pain was sort of this created that desire for the opposite, and how those opposites created this seeking to cultivate a life that was worth living for you. I think that also brings up such an important point, and I wanted to ask you, you also do a lot of research on the immigrant mindset and how that affects youth and how that affects life in general. And I want to understand how your experience, how your research has enhanced your understanding of what makes us human in this sense.
Right. So before we get to that, I wanted to point that children are born with all the abilities that we described, all the wheels, beautifully positioned perfectly for them, for their perfect vehicle, and without the lenses on, right? They have natural ability to see the intraconnection. It is then the way that we're trained that takes away one wheel, half a wheel. It takes the wheels away instead of having them on. Right? It takes them away. And then when we try to put them back on, that's the other train. That's the training that comes back and makes us look like freaks. Right. But if we're trained from the beginning with the natural inherentness of who we are, then it is much more natural. We don't have to go through those painful stages as much. We don't have to. They're part of like little tiny trainings here and there. It is like the as you've mentioned, the ebbs and the flows. And then I also wanted to make sure that your listeners understand this. We're living in complex times. Complexity means that there are no solutions. Solutions, if there are solutions, then you have consultants, you bring them, experts, they bring you some answers, perfectly, go on and do. Today, it's a world of complexity. And I'm talking about this is based on the learning methodologies, right? I'm using scientific terms, so to say, but I'll make them easy. Complexity means AI. decisions made by robots. We don't know what we're, you know, people are getting fired left and right. It's changing the way leadership works, the way boardrooms work, the way companies and products work. It is changing. We have wars, a couple of them brewing all over the globe. We've got leadership that has self-interest, and we have the natural, the you know, the ecological issues that we're dealing with. This is a complex world. It is global. It is no longer just the countryside of Romania or the countryside of India, or even, you know, here and, you know, within the parameters of a known boundaries context. This means that we don't know how we're going to be acting. We don't know what decision we're going to be making. We don't have experts for this stuff. So what this means is that we need to allow that inner affective guidance system align us with what the felt sense, the sense that we know that is on the higher path, that feels better, feels exciting, that feels empowering. It'll have to be the felt sense more and more guiding us. It will have to be. And then bringing the cognitive wheels, bring in, you know, the rest of them to be able to create decisions out of those polarities of that complexity. So small decisions, small things, you can use a lot of cognitive power and willpower, and you're going to get it done. But when you get to do bigger things and more things, that becomes effortful, extremely effortful, exhausting. And that is what's happening today in complexity. It no longer works only using this. Actually, this is my left side. Yeah, only this. And very little of this, you know, because it, you know, we cannot become emotional in the boardroom, right? So then once we start using for bigger, better, humongous decisions and more things that we can do, we need to align, not effort.
And
Yeah.
I'm curious, with the alignment, it also sounds like a lot of embodiment, right? Like coming
It
away
is.
from the head and coming
It
into
is.
the body and the senses and,
Mm.
navigating from that field. It just sounds a lot like that's the invitation for us to embody our humanity more and not just think about it, not just intellectualize it, not just, you know.
Yeah.
uh,
Well,
yeah.
neurology. Yeah, neurology and the you know, brain science more and more, and so much research out there showing that everything sparks from an affect. Transformation. I mean, there's Zorana Ivkovic from Yale, who's all the research shows this, that transformation, change, education, learning sparks from the affective, from the embodiment. We call it embodiment. Some call it embodiment, some call it affective, some call it emotion, some call it the reward system. Whatever it is, you know, it starts from a feeling. Let's just say it simply.
I love that. No, thank you so much for bringing all of this into perspective because you've managed to really cover a lot and you've spoken about it with such accessibility as well. And these are a lot of complex
I'm happy.
topics that
Good.
you're bringing in. So I'm just so grateful to have you here and to have you speak to these things. And, as we're about to wrap up, I wanted to close out with the question just to bring it whole circle. In your life, what is the most human thing that you have experienced?
The most human thing is holding my kids' hands and feeling that bond and that love. And I still remember, like Andrew, my youngest son, when he was 5, he started becoming embarrassed, you know, for mommy to hold his hand. So we would step out to go to, for me to take him to school, and he would put his hand in mine, and I would hold it. And then he'd say, but now it's enough. And he would take it away. That. Also, just walking by and looking at flowers and roses and seeing the how critically important all this life around us is. Like the beautiful bees They're going from flower to flower and pollinating. And the beauty of those flowers that are meant to attract these little bees, right? And I can never finish anything without talking about my kitty Lorenzo. He's my love bug. So how can an animal teach you so much about love? And it's more than an inherently human bond. It's an intra-connected bond. It is biological bond. So that is why I'm saying is we are soon going to be in a agentic relationship of adaptation with non-biological beings, advanced technologies. We need to hone in. We need to focus our hardwired ability to feel, to be with the biological systems around us, because we're all intraconnected now.
Wow. Thank you so much. I love that. It made my heart feel so warm and so fuzzy. And I think you ended with such a valuable nugget of wisdom. So thank you, Adriana. Thank you for being here. And yeah, thank you for your presence.
Thank you, Virshti. I appreciate being on this podcast. If there are any questions, you can always reach out, and it was an honor. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in. If this conversation stayed with you, share it with someone you think would feel it too. And if you have your own answer to the question, I'd love to hear it. Until next time.